Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me, Mrs. Miller. Today I will be reading the book The Hideout by Susanna Mattiangeli. Now, this book has so much to offer us as readers, so we want to really pay attention and we want to think about some things while we're reading this book, and especially after reading this book. So, I just want to tell you some things that I'd like you to think about. First, I would like you to think about the life lesson or the message that this book teaches us. I would also like you to think about what this book reminds you of. Can you make a text to self connection? Does this remind you of anything that you have done? And then also, can you make a text to text connection? Does this book remind you of another book that maybe you've read? So we'll be doing those three things after reading this book. But first, before we begin, if you would like me to read a certain book that you love, go ahead down in the comments and write your name and write the book that you would like me to read, and I will make sure to do a read aloud with your favorite book. I really hope to hear from you. Also, please like and subscribe to hear more from me. Okay, I hope you enjoy this story. The Hideout. Where are you? A voice called. Hurry up, we have to go. But Hannah wasn't there, and no one could find her. Hannah heard the voice calling, but it was too late to go back. She would live in the park, collecting lost things, drinking from the fountain, and hunting for birds. Maybe she'd wear a raccoon hat. There was just too much to do. She really had to stay. She made herself a cape out of feathers. She made herself a bed out of leaves, a bow and an arrow. What else would she need? Some wood, a nice fire, nothing else. The shelter was perfect, and she wasn't alone. The odd furry creature was with her too. She had found it behind the shrubs. The odd furry creature was always quiet and liked to hide in the darkness. Are you hiding from hunters? She asked. But the odd furry creature didn't respond. Are you hiding from enemies? She tried once more. The odd furry creature was silent again. Can I hide with you? Hannah pretended to hear a yes. She made it a cape out of feathers. She made it a bed out of leaves, right next to hers. Life in the park was wild. They ate grass and biscuits they found on the ground. They roasted pigeons on the campfire. They collected caterpillars, sticks, and dry leaves. Outside the shrubs, dogs peed on trees, old ladies went for walks, and balloons flew away. But no one ever wandered into Hannah and the odd furry creature's secret hideout. Anyone who tried would get stuck in the thick, wiry tangle of branches and leaves. Only Hannah knew the way through the bushes. It wasn't so hard if this was your home, but the more time passed, the thicker the branches grew, and the smaller the gaps in the shrubs became. In the secret hideout, there was little light. Only a few feeble noises made their way in from the outside. Whistling, bicycle bells, and voices from far away. Always far away. Hannah and the odd furry creature roasted lots of pigeons and collected lots of sticks. After that, it was perfectly quiet. So quiet. And only then a voice, loud and clear, came from who knows where. "Where are you?" it said. It was hard to believe, but somewhere, someone was still looking for her. Hannah wondered if everything was still the same outside. She wondered if there was anything new to see after all this time. Hannah grabbed the odd furry creature's paw. "Have you ever seen a balloon?" she asked without answer. "Have you ever seen a dog?" Silence again. "Would you come outside with me and have a look?" Hannah pretended to hear a yes. She took off its cape made of feathers, folded it carefully, and put it on the bed made of leaves right next to hers. They put out the fire and left their secret hideout. They made themselves very small and crept through the tangle of branches and leaves, careful not to get hurt. The odd furry creature came out into the bright white light. Hannah took it for a little walk around the park. The old lady stared at it, and the children petted it. The creature would get used to it in time. "Hurry up," said the voice from far away. "We have to go." Hannah brushed away the crumbs from her eraser, blew on the piece of paper, and got up from her chair. "Here I am. I'm coming," she said, glancing at her drawing one last time. Back in the park, the odd furry creature was still sitting on a bench between dogs and balloons. The shrubs no longer seemed so thick. From the outside, no one would have imagined that deep in the drawing, at the end of a long road made of brown and green pencil marks, a little girl had lived for a very long time. Did that book surprise you at all? Give me a thumbs up if that book surprised you. I know that book surprised me the first time I read it. I was reading it and I was like, I'm so confused by this because, like, these things can't happen in real life. Is this like a book that's like fantasy? And then at the end, when we see her in her bedroom with the drawing, we realize that all of these things are happening where? In her imagination. That's right. Hannah in this book has a very active imagination. Would you agree with that statement? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Yes, she certainly does. She imagines this whole other world and this creature, this odd creature. And then at the very end, we learn that this is all happening in her imagination and that it's that she's drawing a picture of the things happening in her imagination. So I thought that that was a pretty cool surprise ending. And now that brings us to the life lesson that this book teaches us. What do you think we can learn as readers from this book? I want you to whisper into your hands what you're thinking. Ready, set, go. This book teaches us stop, look, and listen. So I'm wondering if you shared anything like what I was thinking. I was thinking that with your imagination, anything is possible, right? You could imagine yourself doing anything. You could imagine yourself in outer space. You could imagine yourself in a rainforest. You could imagine yourself in a hideout like Hannah from this book. Anything is possible in your imagination. And that brings me now to our text to self connection because this book reminds me of something I used to do when I was a child. When I was a kid, I used to build forts with my friends. Have you ever done this before? Have you ever taken blankets and draped them over furniture and like you make a big fort or like a tent? Well, I used to do that all the time. And my friends and I, we would pretend that we were camping. We would have flashlights. We would pretend to roast marshmallows and we would take a pencil and pretend that we were holding a marshmallow on it over the fire and we'd go pretending to blow out the fire on the marshmallow. We were using our imaginations to take ourselves on a camping adventure, even though we were really just in my basement. Have you ever done anything like that? Have you ever used your imagination to take you someplace? I want you right now to think, does this book remind you of anything that you have done? I want you to share with someone near you on the count of 3. Now, if you don't have anyone near you, you can always share with an imaginary friend, right? Because you can use your imagination to think up anything. So go ahead and share with someone next to you or share with your imaginary friend what you're thinking. What does this book remind you of? Ready, set, turn and talk. Okay, now if you're sharing with a real person and not an imaginary friend, make sure to give your real person a chance to talk too, right? We're going to need to take turns. So go ahead, let your partner share. Stop, look, and listen. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Wow, what wonderful imaginations you all have. Now, the last thing that I want you to think about is, does this book remind you of another book that you've read, or maybe even a movie that you've watched? When we make a connection between a book that we've read before and a book that we're reading right now, we say that we're making a text-to-text connection. But that's just a fancy way of saying that this book reminds me of another book. The Hideout reminds me so much of this book, Where the Wild Things Are. Have you ever read it? If you've read it, please raise your hand. And if you have not read it, I highly recommend it. It's such a wonderful, wonderful book. But this book really makes me think so much of the Hideout. In fact, it even starts and ends in a very similar way. Do you remember how the Hideout starts? Let's take a look back. So how did the book The Hideout start? Yes, it starts in Hannah's bedroom. And we don't know who it is, but there's a voice calling for her saying, "Where are you? Hurry up, we have to go." And then, how does this book end? That's right. It ends right back in her bedroom. Well, wouldn't you know it, Where the Wild Things starts in Max's bedroom and then ends in Max's bedroom as well. Can you think of any other books or even a movie that this book reminds you of? It might remind you of another book where the character also has a very active imagination, or maybe there's another book where there's a surprise ending, or maybe there's another book that's very adventurous and takes place in nature. When you have an idea in your head, would you please touch your head so that I know that your idea is ready? Okay, if you have an idea of another book or movie that the Hideout reminds you of, please call it out in 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much for sharing. I want to share a few other books with you that the Hideout reminds me of. It reminds me of this book, I Will Read to You. And this book, Good Dream Dragon. And I saved my personal favorite for last, Walrus in the Bathroom. This book was actually written by yours truly. That's right, it's written by me, Mrs. Miller. I will put the links to all of these books in the description and the comments below, so make sure to check them. And also, don't forget, if you would like me to dedicate a book to you, please make sure to write a comment with the title of the book that you'd like me to read, and I will make sure to read it and to dedicate it to you. Thank you so much for reading with me. Please remember to like and subscribe if you would like to hear more like this. Bye-bye.